What's up, family? It's Andre Gordon here with another episode of What's in It for My Money. On today's episode, we're going to focus on currency. We're going to look at 8 different currencies around the world and see how each of these currencies can have an impact on your investment strategy and ultimately your money. Please don't forget to smash that like button and hit that subscriber button to become a part of the family and get updated weekly content. Currencies are one of the small details that many investors overlook, but can have a huge impact on your overall investment strategy and ultimately impact your money. All right, so let's take a look at the 8 currencies that every investor should know and the respective central banks that are associated with those currencies and the respective nations. The US dollar. The US dollar is the home denomination of the world's largest economy and is sometimes referred to as the greenback. Created in 1913 via the Federal Reserve Act, the Federal Reserve is the central bank of the United States. The system is headed by a chairman, a board of governors, and most of the focus is on the branches, which are otherwise known as the FOMC, which stands for the Federal Open Market Committee. The FOMC supervises all market operations, including monetary policy and interest rates. As a side, if you want to learn a little bit more about the entire Federal Reserve System, check out the playlist entitled Federal Reserve 101, where I go through in detail the Federal Reserve System, how it was created, the responsibilities that the Federal Reserve holds itself to, and the impact that it has on your money today. The 12 voting members and non-members, including additional Federal Reserve Bank presidents, meet regularly to share their views on the current economic situation in the United States and abroad. This committee meets to discuss their views every 6 weeks. As with any currency, the dollar is supported by economic fundamentals, including the gross domestic product, otherwise known as GDP, manufacturing, and other employment reports. The main influence on the US dollar valuation is the Central Bank of the United States, which is the Federal Reserve. When the Fed makes any announcements regarding monetary policy or interest rates, that has a huge impact on the valuations of the dollar on a daily basis. The US dollar is the major benchmark that trades against all other currencies across the world. That would include euro, that would include the Japanese yen, as well as the British pound. The European euro. The Central Bank of the European Union is the European Central Bank, otherwise known as ECB. The ECB has the right to issue euro banknotes as they see fit, with some interjection from policymakers around monetary policy and the direction of that policy for the entire European zone. Headquartered in Frankfurt, Germany, the ECB makes up 19 member countries for the Central Bank of the European zone. The ECB is headquartered in Frankfurt, Germany, and is the central bank for the 19 member countries that make up the European Union. In similar fashion to the FOMC, the ECB is made up of a committee that primarily focuses on monetary policy for the Eurozone. It is comprised of an executive board that includes both a president and a vice president. The committee makeup of the ECB are chosen with consideration that 4 of the seats are reserved for 4 of the 5 largest countries in the European zone, including Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands. It ensures that all of the largest countries within the European zone are represented on a consistent basis, even though administrations may change. This committee meets every week. While the FOMC is focused on maximum employment and maintaining the stability of long-term interest rates, the ECB is focused on price stability. While price stability is the main focus of the ECB, their monetary policy is grounded in making sure that price stability is the main principle and that interest rates are changed or adjusted to maintain that price stability. The main currency for the European Union is the euro. The euro tends to act in a much slower fashion compared to its currency colleagues, the British pound, the Canadian dollar, or the Australian dollar. The Japanese yen. The Bank of Japan is the central bank for the country of Japan. As such, they are in charge of monetary policy, currency issuance, money market operations, and data and economic analysis for monetary policy for the country of Japan. The Bank of Japan meets about 8 times per year, and the governor, along with 9 board members, including 2 appointed deputy governors, focuses on economic stability as well as transparency and independence from the reigning administration of Japan. Japanese yen is the official currency of the Bank of Japan. One of its benefits is that it offers a very low interest rate, but it is often pitted against higher yielding currencies around the world, and that would include the New Zealand and Australian dollar, as well as the British pound. The United States dollar and the euro often are leading currencies ahead of the Japanese yen in comparison. The average daily trading range for the Japanese yen is between 70 to 140 pips, with very volatile extreme ranges going well over 200 pips. The Japanese yen became the official currency of Japan in May of 1971, but its history dates back all the way to 1882, when the official government of Japan adopted the yen as its official currency. The British pound England consists of a board, otherwise known as the Court of Directors, which is appointed by the Queen. It also has a monetary policy committee that is headed by the governor of the bank. Similarly to the FOMC, the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee, the Court of Directors is made up of 5 executive members and can go up to as many as 9 members, which are all appointed by the Queen. The makeup of this committee includes a chair and a deputy chair. You also have the Monetary Policy Committee, otherwise known as the MPC, that sets the monetary policy for the entire country of England. The makeup of the MPC, or the Monetary Policy Committee, includes the Governor of the Bank of England, as well as 9 other members, 4 of which are appointed by the Chancellor of Exchequer. Meeting at least 8 times per year to discuss policy, the MPC is primarily focused on price stability for the Bank of England. As such, the benchmark that the MPC has set for inflation is around 2%. That is very similar to the same benchmark that the FOMC sets for inflation for the United States, around 2%. If this benchmark is compromised in any way, the governor has the responsibility to notify the Chancellor of Exchequer of any dramatic changes in the CPI, whether that's an increase or a decrease. Release of this letter typically is a precursor of volatility in both U.S. and European markets, because it gives an indication that the Bank of England will start to have a more restrictive monetary policy based upon changes in the inflation rate. The Bank of England currency is the British pound. It's also known as the pound sterling or cable. It typically trails behind the United States dollar, the euro, and the Japanese yen in terms of currencies that are traded around the world. Trailing the other 3 currencies that were mentioned before, the British pound typically has a very wide trading range throughout the day, trading anywhere between 100 pips and 150 pips on a normal day. The British pound has also gone as narrow as 20 pips per day in the past. The British pound became the official currency of the United Kingdom when England and Scotland merged to form one currency in 1707. However, the British pound was first created as a form of money in the year 760. That makes the British pound the oldest currency that is still traded as legal tender in the world. In addition to the United Kingdom, the British pound has served as the form of currency for many of the British colonies throughout history. That would include New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. The Swiss franc. Different from all of the other central banks, the Swiss National Bank is the governing body for both public and private ownership. This stems from the fact that the Swiss National Bank is technically a corporation with special regulations. A little over half of the governing body of the Swiss National Bank is owned by Switzerland states and other public institutions. It is this unique arrangement that emphasizes economic and financial stability from the governing body of the Swiss National Bank. Smaller than most central banks across the globe, monetary policy decisions are governed by 3 major policy heads who meet on a quarterly basis. In addition, this board has also created a band that will manage interest rates. The band looks at plus or minus 50 basis points on either side to be able to manage interest rates for their economy. CHF, which is also the abbreviation for the Swiss franc, is the official currency of Switzerland and the 6th most traded currency in the world. The abbreviation CHF is derivative of the Latin name for Switzerland, and the F stands for franc. The Swiss franc was officially recognized as Switzerland's currency in 1850. Switzerland has 26 different cantons or member states that speak 4 different languages. Over a period of years, the number of member states each had their own individual currencies. One of the unifying actions for this entire region was to get behind one currency, which was the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc is also the legal tenure for the Principality of Liechtenstein. The Canadian dollar. Established by the Bank of Canada Act of 1934, the Central Bank of Canada is focused on low and stable inflation, a safe and secure currency, financial stability, and responsibility and management of government funds and the public debt. Established by the Bank of Canada Act of 1934, the Bank of Canada is focused on low and stable inflation, a safe and secure currency, financial stability, and the efficient management of government funds and the public debt. Acting independently, the Bank of Canada has a lot of similarities with the Swiss National Bank, as both are corporations, with the Minister of Finance of Canada holding shares directly in that corporation. Despite the symbiotic relationship between the Bank of Canada and the administration, it is the governor's responsibility of the Bank of Canada to focus on price stability within reason with the current administration, while simultaneously looking at ways to consider their concerns. Very similarly to many of the other progressive economies around the world, the Bank of Canada has an inflationary target of 2% as well. Many of their monetary policy decisions are focused on price stability and keeping inflation in check. The Canadian dollar, or otherwise known as the loonie, is the official currency of Canada, which was introduced in 1987, was the replacement for the paper version of the Canadian dollar, and became such a popular nickname that the Royal Mint trademarked it in 2006. Keeping very much in line with the Bank of Canada's goal for price stability, the loonie currently trades between 50 pips and 100 pips. The Australian and New Zealand dollar, offering one of the highest interest rates in the global markets. The Reserve Bank of Australia has been focused on two cornerstones for its economic policy. One, price stability, and the other, economic strength. Headed by the governor, the board is made up of 6 at-large members, including a deputy governor and the secretary to the Treasury. Their goal is to keep inflation between 2 and 3% annually, while meeting 11 times per year to focus on monetary policy. The Reserve Bank of New Zealand follows a similar pattern as the Reserve Bank of Australia, with one caveat: they primarily focus on targeting inflation with maintaining a foundation for price stability. AUD is the abbreviation for the Australian dollar. It is also known as the Aussie or the Aussie dollar. It replaced the Australian pound in 1966 and has been Australia's official currency for over 50 years. AUD also benefits greatly from Australia's typically conservative monetary policy. For example, the Reserve Bank of Australia did not intervene with an economic stimulus to the similar degree as the US, Great Britain, and the Bank of Japan following the Great Recession. This contributed to much higher interest rates in Australia and became a very attractive haven for investors seeking higher currency yields. AUD typically trades in a range between 70 and 80 pips, but very much closely follows the flow of commodities, particularly gold and silver, in terms of their range and volatility. The South African Rand, very much molded in the shape and structure of the United Kingdom's Bank of England, the South African Reserve Bank is the monetary authority for South Africa, having many of the same responsibilities as other central banks across the globe. The South African Reserve Bank is also a creditor in many situations, a clearing bank, and a custodian of gold for South Africa. Above all else, this Reserve Bank is focused on maintaining price stability and will intervene in currency markets when a situation arises and is in the best interest of South Africa. Above all else, this central bank is focused on maintaining the foundation of price stability within the country. And when the situation arises, it will certainly intervene in the foreign currency exchange markets when the situation is most beneficial for South Africa. In comparison to other central banks, the South African Reserve Bank is a wholly owned private entity with more than 600 shareholders who own less than 1% and are regulated to do so, thereby maintaining a focus on the public interest and the economy over any private individual. To maintain this focus, the board, which includes the governor and 14 members, maintain monetary policy and meet regularly throughout the year to focus on strategic planning, and policy for South Africa. South African Rand was first introduced in February of 1961, right before the establishment of the Republic of South Africa, and it replaced the South African pound. The South African Rand is considered somewhat of a volatile currency, with many of its correlating prices related to gold and other commodities. In line with its very volatile reputation, the South African Rand can have a trading range of several thousand pips per day. But when you look at the history of this currency and compare it to other currencies around the world, it's very much in line and equivalent to the British pound in terms of its trading range. What's the bottom line for my money? The bottom line is this. As financial markets continue to evolve and grow globally, foreign exchange and currencies will play a more increasing role in day-to-day transactions. Considerable opportunities exist, especially in markets like Forex, where those transactions are averaging well over $6 to $10 trillion per day. A conversion for a physical trade or a simple diversification of a portfolio, currencies continue to offer investors more and more opportunities to diversify and increase the value of their portfolio. Although the currency market is often built for the sophisticated investor, currencies can be a great diversification tool even for the most novice investor. That is it. A summary of the 8 top currencies in the global market. Please don't forget to smash that like button, hit that subscriber button to get updated weekly content. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of the currencies that are traded globally, the central banks associated with those currencies, and how those impact you and your money. Thanks for tuning in.